My name is Shlomi Dinar, and I'm the Dean of the Stephen J. Green School of International and Public Affairs, and it's truly a pleasure to welcome you to today's event, which is titled 5 Years of the Abraham Accords, Exploring New Avenues for Jewish and Muslim Understanding and Cooperation. Thank you for being here this afternoon and for taking part in a conversation that is both timely and deeply meaningful. 5 years after the signing of the Abraham Accords, we find ourselves at a moment that calls for both reflection as well as renewed commitment. The Accords represented a historic diplomatic shift, but also opened space for something deeper: people-to-people engagement, interfaith dialogue, and the possibility of reimagining relationships in a region too long defined by conflict. This conversation feels especially meaningful in the post-October 7th world we now inhabit. The pain, fear, polarization that have followed have underscored how fragile trust can be and how urgently we need spaces for honest dialogue and human connection. At moments like this, the work of finding common ground is not optional. It is essential. And not simply to allow coexistence, but to imagine the possibility of a deeper embrace rooted in dignity, empathy, as well as shared responsibility. Universities have a critical role to play in this work. And at FIU, and especially within the Green School, we are committed to fostering rigorous inquiry alongside pluralism, respect, and global engagement. Education, people-to-people engagement, or citizen diplomacy as it's officially called, and sustained dialogue remain among our most powerful tools for countering mistrust and for imagining new forms of cooperation in academic, civic, as well as community spaces. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the Global Jewish Studies program, whose leadership and vision made this event possible. I am especially grateful to its director, Dr. Oren Steer, for his commitment to creating spaces for meaningful and often challenging conversations. I would also like to offer a very special thank you to Dr. Iqbal Akhtar, professor in the Department of Religious Studies, who has been spearheading the Green School's interfaith dialogue initiatives. His leadership and dedication to interreligious engagement exemplify the values we seek to advance through events like today's. I am also grateful to our co-sponsors for their partnership and support: the Department of Religious Studies, the Dorothea Green Lecture Series, the Ruth K. and Shepard Broad Distinguished Lecture Series, and the Department of Politics and International Relations. This collaboration across programs and disciplines reflects the intellectual openness that defines our school and our university. We are, of course, honored to welcome our guest speakers, all young leaders affiliated with Sharaka, a groundbreaking initiative fostering understanding between Arabs and Israelis. These speakers represent a generation willing to challenge hate, promote coexistence, and engage directly with the complexity of a rapidly evolving Middle East. This afternoon, we will hear from a number of members of Sharaka, including Fatima Al-Harbi of Bahrain, Yusuf Al-Hazari of Morocco, as well as Rachel Brinian of Israel. Each brings a distinct national and personal perspective, and together they remind us that the future of Jewish-Muslim relations will be shaped not only by policy, but by people willing to listen, to learn, and to build across difference. Thank you to our speakers for being with us and to all of you for joining us this afternoon. I hope today's dialogue inspires reflection, connection, and sustained engagement here at FIU and beyond. Now it's my pleasure to welcome my colleague, Dr. Iqbal Akhtar, to the podium to introduce our speakers more formally for today's program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean Dinar. We're extremely grateful to you and your team, Daniel and Dana, for helping us put all of this together. This work has kind of come out of a very, very difficult time the last 2 years, the Gaza war and kind of the aftermath for Israelis and Palestinians and for the larger world as a whole, and the catastrophe that's kind of emerged. And through that, we have developed a Jewish-Muslim dialogue and sort of working group with the wonderful partners at Temple Beth Am here in Miami. And last semester, we extended that with Hillel and working with students, Jewish and Muslim and Christian students here at FIU. And so we're very honored to have this delegation from Shiraka trying to develop that person-to-person, citizen-to-citizen diplomacy that's so critical for the long-term future and the peace of the Middle East, but also, I think, between two very important religious traditions in the world and sort of the future ahead of us. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Iqbal Akhtar, and I'm a professor in the Department of Religious Studies and Politics and International Relations. And one of the things that I hope that you all get out of this session today, and hopefully future sessions that we're going to have, is to hear voices from the region who are genuinely interested in understanding of the other. We don't necessarily have to agree on the politics, but one of the things that's really powerful about a university and being here in the United States is we have the freedom to be able to express who we are authentically in terms of our religious beliefs, in terms of our identity, and that we're all committed to creating a peaceful and pluralistic world. And so we're really, really honored to have three very important guests here today. From Bahrain, Fatima, from Morocco, Yusuf, and from Shiraka, we have Rachel. So just to kind of really briefly introduce both Fatima and Yusuf, and then I'll let Rachel introduce herself. So Fatima is a doctoral candidate and director of the Gulf Affairs part of Shiraka. She serves also as a distinguished peace ambassador from Bahrain. She's a prolific author and uses the power of storytelling and academic rigor to dismantle stereotypes and build bridges between cultures. Her work is centered on advocacy that empowers youth and creates sustainable pathways for regional cooperation and coexistence. Yusuf is from Morocco, and he's the director of Shiraka there and a social entrepreneur in marketing and advertising. Beyond his business, he is also the founder of Firiha, a transformative nonprofit dedicated to preventing girls from dropping out of school in Africa. And he also brings a unique perspective on how social entrepreneurship and regional partnerships can drive long-term social progress. So they're very important voices that want to build dialogue and create a peaceful world. And they're also, I think, very brave people because what they have to say a lot of times in terms of Jewish-Muslim dialogue is extremely unpopular in many parts of the Muslim world, and particularly sort of in the current climate. And so I really applaud them for saying what they're saying and trying to build bridges. And I know it's very difficult, but know that you have allies in the Muslim world and Muslims in the Western diaspora that really appreciate the work that you're doing. And inshallah, we'll make it a better world through all of our individual efforts. So with that, I want to bring up Rachel, and she'll kind of introduce a little bit about Shiraka and this really important endeavor.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for being here. We really do think in these times it's extremely important to have these conversations. Whether you agree with everything we say or you don't, we really appreciate you just taking the time to learn and hear another perspective. So as Iqbal mentioned, I'm Rachel. A little bit about Shiraka first. We are a nonprofit organization that was founded right after the signing of the Abraham Accords. So we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary. And it really started with the idea being, it's great that our countries, our governments came together and signed a piece of paper, and now we'll have some economic agreements, hopefully no wars between the countries. But we didn't want it to stop there. Young entrepreneurs from the different countries came together and said, we need to make sure that this peace, this agreement goes down to the people itself. Because if you look at the Middle East and and bringing peace if the actual people of these countries aren't interacting with each other, learning about each other. We're not going to get anywhere. We're going to be stuck with cold peace that unfortunately we've seen with agreements in the past throughout the region. So that's really where the idea came from, is focus on people-to-people diplomacy, bringing people together, and that's what we've been doing for the past 5 years, bringing delegations from throughout the Arab world to Israel, bringing delegations from Israel to the different Abraham Accords countries, and really trying to have each other learn about the cultures, the history, the religion, and trying to find common ground between our peoples to really help lift this new generation of leaders to lead towards peace and come together. Just quickly a little bit about myself, and then I'll let my amazing coworkers share their personal stories as well. I'm the U.S. Affairs Manager at Sharaka, so I help do things like this with our organization, is bringing our work to the United States. I'm an Israeli religious Jew. Really how my story started in getting involved in all of this. A few years ago, right before the Abraham Accords were actually signed, I did a study program in Morocco. I was based in Rabat. And I was based with a religious Muslim family, and I was doing a homestay. So for about 2 months, I was living with a religious Muslim family as a religious Jew myself. And before I flew, everyone said, as a religious Jew, as an Israeli, don't tell people that you're Jewish. They said, people in Morocco will be okay with you being a Jew, but because of Israel, it might get complicated, so just don't mention it at all. So I was really, really scared. I didn't wear my Magen David necklace. When I was first introduced with the family, I told them I was vegetarian. I didn't say, that I was keeping kosher, and that's why I'm not eating meat. I just said I'm vegetarian, and I just said I wasn't religious at all. And I went a couple times, a couple weeks like that, just being a normal person. And then I remember every morning my family, the call to prayer would happen, and they would all go to pray, and I would stand silently in my room, and I would say my own morning prayers. And I remember one morning, my host brother opened the door and saw me praying, and I remember all of a sudden this started a whole new conversation of, what are you doing? I thought you weren't religious. Are you Jewish? Are you Israeli? And it started this whole conversation. I remember being so terrified, to say that I'm a Jew and that I'm Israeli, and then just seeing how open my host family was to learning about this made me realize, all of these biases that I'd heard coming into this trip weren't true, and I let other opinions affect me. It made me want to hide my identity. It made me start to judge the family, being so afraid. And so all of this kind of started my journey in working with the Muslim community, working with the Arab community, and really trying to bridge these together, because I realized the second me and my host family started having these conversations and just being open with ourselves, we found out, we love the same foods, our religions are so similar, and it really changed my whole mindset, and I hopefully for them as well, and I still keep in touch with them, and they're amazing, and it really just changed my whole perspective. That's just a little bit about me, and I'll let my coworkers here really share their incredible stories. Fatima, you want to go first?
Hello everyone. My name is Fatima Al-Harbi. I'm from Bahrain. I came from a country that's very small, so many people don't know where Bahrain is located in the map. But growing up in Bahrain is a special case comparing to other Arab and Muslim countries, because we always had Jews Bahrainis, Christian Bahrainis. We had a lot of different religions living in Bahrain, the Buddhists, the Hindus, and all of them have their temples, their synagogue, their churches in Bahrain. So growing up in Bahrain, we saw this coexistence as a reality, not a slogan that people say and dream of. So it wasn't a surprise when Bahrain signed the Abraham Accord, because we grew up in a community that encourages interfaith dialogue, and even our leaders celebrate other religions' holidays and go to the temples, the synagogues, to the churches to celebrate different religious holidays. But also in the same time, growing up in a Muslim and Arab country, you hear that narrative about Israel and the Jews from Israel, that they are the enemy and you're not supposed to talk to them, you're supposed to hate them. So I always had questions. I go back home and I tell my mom why I'm supposed to hate someone that I don't know. And my mom tells me, no, you're not supposed to hate someone that you don't know. Did they treat you bad? Did you meet them? So I always had this debates on my mind. And then the Abraham Accord happened. Sharaka was established after that, and I get invited to visit Israel for the first time. I wanted to see by my own eyes. I didn't want to hear from the media. I didn't want people to fill me with propaganda. I wanted to meet real people. That was my only agenda. Of course, I was afraid because the only thing that I know about Israel and Palestine is the conflict, the war, everyone hating everyone, Muslims wanting to kill Jews, Jews wanting to kill Muslims. But the moment we landed and went to Tel Aviv, just walking down the street as a tourist, exploring the area, I immediately get approached because of my hijab, and someone come running to me, and I was like, oh God, it will be something hateful. He'll tell me you're not welcome, go back to your home. We don't want Arabs and Muslims here. And he said, where are you from? Are you from Bahrain or Dubai? He knew immediately because of all the fuss about the Abraham Accord, the historical Abraham Accord in the media. And I answered Bahrain. My friend said Dubai, Abu Dhabi. And he said, welcome. We've been waiting to have peace with Arabs for a long time. If you tell me 10 years ago that I would be welcomed by a stranger, a Jew in the middle of Tel Aviv street that way, I wouldn't believe that. But that was the reality. I met Israeli Arabs, I met Israeli Jews, Druze, Christians, Palestinians, Bedouins. We went all over Israel. We went to the north, we went to Jerusalem, we went to Tel Aviv. I got to meet real people. And the only thing that everyone shared with me, they told me, we're fed up with hate, we're fed up with conflict. We just want to live. Either they're a Palestinian or Israeli. And that narrative we don't get to hear back home. We hear that everyone hates everyone and everyone wants to kill everyone. But the normal person living every day just want to live, just want to have dreams, just want to prosper and have opportunities and travel. And I found myself in a place wanting to share that narrative, that we can choose love over hate and choose peace over conflict. And I started sharing that on social media, and you can imagine immediately everyone hating me, backlash, wanting to silence me. But that only made me realize that my voice and people like my colleagues' voices are very important and vital. So I found myself wanting to advocate for peace, wanting to advocate for the Abraham Accord, wanting to bring the people of the Middle East together. And that's what I've been doing the past 5 years. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Very honored and happy to be here with you. I just came 2 days ago from Marrakesh, Morocco. And to see this weather, I was like, maybe I came back to summer, and I'm very happy about that. So thank you so much, Dr. Iqbal, and to you, Mr. Dean, for introducing us and giving us the stage and the opportunity to share with you our stories. Of course, they are not as courageous as they were portrayed by you, but still we had to share something because we've met with many aspects of societies all over the world, whether from the Israeli society, Palestinians, Moroccans, and Bahrainis, and from the Gulf in general. And there's things that we would love to challenge and debate with you, and this is why I'm here. So earlier today, I had to share a little bit about the story of Morocco in that lunch, and I would love to reshare it with you again. So I come from a country that was still very well known of its history of between Muslims and Jews. As a matter of fact, Morocco hosted Jews more than 2,000 years ago, when after the destruction of the first temple. And the second wave of Jews that came to Morocco was after the Spanish Inquisition, when they got expelled from Spain and Portugal. And at their surprise, they thought there would be no Jew in Morocco back then, but then they were surprised that there were Jews there for more than 1,600 years before that date. We thrived as a nation. As a matter of fact, the founding dynasty of Morocco is called the Idrisid, and at the center of their finance activity in Fez, which was the capital back then, Jews were the one that led that financial activities. And not only that, but also craftsmanship. If you read a lot about the Andalusian era also, you will see that Jews really brought a lot of skills, not only in finance but also in terms of geopolitical leadership. You know that Morocco is the first country to acknowledge USA independence. Yes, it's the first one, way before France. And you know who wrote that letter? It is a Moroccan Jew who wrote the letter to the king, to the sultan back then, to be sent to the Americans. So you can understand how things were, how the kind of coexistence we live in Morocco. This is only the good news. The bad news is that we were not immune from the propaganda, trying to demonize Israel, trying to make it as if it's a religious war between Muslims and Jews. Later on, you understand that this is just a geopolitical war between Palestinians and Israelis, and it's very far from being a religious like war. And as a matter of fact, Morocco is the only country that has a judicial rabbinic law in its own constitution, meaning that roughly the 2,000 Jews that they are still living right now, out of 37 million Moroccans, they have their own bylaws of rabbinic laws that that manages their community in terms of marriage and other social aspects of that community. And if you're gonna ask me how it happened, I would say maybe thanks to the king himself, because we have a lot of stories where the king protected the Jews first back in the Holocaust time. Recently, after we signed the Abraham Accords, those accords they were not impacted by the ongoing war right now in Gaza. And here you can see that there is a leadership, very strong one, that wants to differentiate between what's geopolitical and what's about identity, peace, and culture. So for me, as I lived a little bit spoiled in terms of culture and religion, my both parents, they grew up with Jews back in two different cities, one in the south and one in the middle, like in the center. My both parents, they were Berber and Arabs. It's a mixed blood, and they had their own connection with the Jews that they lived next to them. I've never thought that one day I will go and see by myself what's really happening in Israel, because for me it's just an expansion of a culture I've seen before. But due to the propaganda and the misinformation that I lived in Morocco, and here I'm talking about channels way before the social media, we're talking here about Al Jazeera and other channels and medias that they wanted so bad to demonize Israel and to make the Palestinians as the underdog. Of course, Palestinians, they have all the rights to claim and to have their own country and to have their stability by their own, but not by demonizing, not by creating a sort of enmity with the Israelis. Maybe I believe that the role of media right now is to bring people together without kind of making it as a hateful perspective one towards the other. If you ask like someone from Gaza if they hate Israel, maybe they will say yes. After October 7, if you ask an Israeli if they hate the people from Gaza, maybe they will say yes. But the truth relies on the fact that it's just geopolitical. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with the people themselves. And for us Moroccans, when we were shaped and impacted by this propaganda, they had to do a compromise, which is very funny. That compromise is, we lived since forever with the Jews, and we cannot hate them. We cannot hate them now. We are one family, one nation, one country. So here is the compromise. We love the Jews. We hate the Zionists. Even though when I ask my friends who label themselves as Zionists, Moroccan Zionists, they're like, there is no difference. And most of the Jews right now, they are Zionists anyway. Like, of course, there are some sects that they define themselves as non-Zionist or only Jews, like some American Jews and all that. But mostly, if we do a poll, most of the Jews are Zionists and they are tied to Israel, etc. I had to go by myself and see. Like, I believe that is the most sane thing to do. If you want to look for information, go and see by yourself. Internet alone will not give you the real perspective, and nobody will restrain you from visiting Israel. Many friends who wanted to go to Israel, they did. Just buy a ticket and go and see by yourself. Nobody is restraining you or refraining you from that. I went there, let's say 4 years ago, exactly. 4 years ago, I went to Israel. And to my surprise, it's really weird, to be honest with you. I'm talking here as a Muslim, as a Moroccan. It's so weird to go to Israel at that era because I felt so stupid, to be honest with you. Very stupid because, first of all, it was the COVID times. The first woman who did PCR to me it was a veiled woman in Ben Gurion airport. So that was the first thing that surprised me. How come a Muslim woman working with Israelis in the Ben Gurion airport in Tel Aviv? Second of all, the person that wanted us to go to do the line, he spoke in Arabic, and then all the signs are trilinguals. So you have Hebrew, Arabic, and then English. And it was a very surprising to me because if it's a Jewish state, then you will see only Hebrew and sometimes English. Makes sense, right? But then I understood that Arabic is an essential part of the identity of Israel. More than 20% of the population of Israel are Arabs. Between Christians, Muslims, and the Druze, they are Arabs. And then to be honest with you, because I was so drawn in this misinformation and propaganda, I asked myself, then where is the genocidal intent? Like they would have started with the Arabs and the Muslim living within the society, then they will go to the Arab outside of their society. Very innocent question. I'm not doing here any Haspara work or trying to reframe Israel as like the best, perfect utopian country you can ever imagine, but still, it was some very innocent questions that I asked myself back then. I even asked some Palestinian friends because I used to work for the World Economic Forum and we had a lot of works between the Bank of Palestine and all that. And it was very funny because I received backlash more from the non-Palestinians than the Palestinians themselves. Because I feel that the Palestinians, they understand the geopolitical stakes and they want to find a solution. But in the same time, they see that the non-Palestinians, they cheer for them, but it feels like they are paving their way to hell with good intention. And this is exactly how I portrayed the image and the picture back then. It was a very life-changing experience because once you go out of Israel, you understand that it is purely a very geopolitical problem between some Iranian proxies, some very genuine leaders that they want peace, but they're all the time silenced. And there's a lot of ideological war about how we will govern and maintain order in the region. I saw a lot of peace, and this is my point of view and my own presentiment, a lot of peace from the Israeli side. I got the chance to go to Jerusalem and to pray in Al-Aqsa, and then I went to Tel Aviv and to see all the aspects of the society there, and I saw a lot of hope actually. Of course, after the October 7th, this hope kind of collapsed a little bit because, innocent people dying in Gaza, and then you ask yourself, then what's peace anyway? But in the same time, when you go deeper towards the motives of this war, you understand that, again, people, they don't want stability because war is becoming more like a business. And people are benefiting from all those donations from all over the world, from GCC, from Morocco, from all over the world, just to maintain a sort of presence in Gaza, for instance. I believe that Palestinians, they deserve a life with dignity. They deserve a life of peace. But I don't want it to be through the enmity against the Israelis. Because within Israel, I saw Arabs living peacefully. I saw Muslims living peacefully within the society of Israel. And I wish that my message is so clear that there will be no peace. I mean, first of all, nobody is going nowhere. Israelis are not going anywhere. Palestinians are not going nowhere. But I want to go somewhere to disappear is our radicalism or our ideological motives that just wants our arguments to win over the other, because people right now are dying and we are still debating about some nonsense, if I'm sorry to say it that way. And so yeah, that's my message. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the very heartfelt words in your experiences. I think a question I have for you both is that you're both Muslims. And one of the things that's been very interesting also to see is that there's a lot more disagreement in different perspectives in the Jewish world than there is in the Muslim world. It seems like in the Muslim world there's much less space to have disagreement or to have different sort of perspectives. And so I'm just wondering what have been your experiences as you've tried to explain, a peaceful message and kind of thinking about engagement with Israel? What is the reaction been to what you have to say? Maybe even what has your family said about the work that you do, and how do you talk to people and create that space that needs to be created in the Muslim world so that there is a peace, there's more resolution, sort of peace between sort of Jews and Muslims.
I think it's important to mention is whenever I say my story, people always ask me why you're a special case from the Middle East, But I think they tell me like why your parents taught you not to hate. But when I ask my parents that question, they tell me the more Muslim you are, that's what you're supposed to be. And unfortunately, extremism took over Islam. That's what we see, and they show that Islam is a religion of hate, of extremism, of killing. But the reality, the major people in our countries, especially the countries of the Abrahamic Accord, is moderate Muslims. Even though if they hate Israel, they hate the Jews, but they're never going to show their hate. They're not going to show extremism, maybe some online hate, that's it. But I think the more you are closer to the real Islam, that's what you're supposed to do. And we have a lot of stories to our Prophet, ﷺ, that how he was a neighbor of a Jew, and even when some problems happen with them, and how he treated them, or how they treated him. So unfortunately, extremism are taking over the majority of Muslims. But I think going back home after this trip, I was surprised with people having so many questions. As much as I saw the hate online, when I meet the people in person, they ask me, were the Jews nice to you? And I'm like, this is, yeah, of course. And they go to my mom and they tell my mom, why your daughter is saying nice stuff about the Jews? And she was like, they treated her well. What do you wanted her to say? If you're a real Muslim, you should say the reality. So people wonder for small things that would surprise you. You see the hate online, but it's not there in person, A lot of people were like, how can I go? I want to see by my own eyes. I want to meet a Jew. I want to meet an Israeli. And they ask a silly question. You would be surprised. But I think that is the first step, is to open up for the others that won't leave space for hate.
So for me, of course, it's like a rally where it's not always pleasant. So of course, I lost a lot of friends and a lot of family members, and I believe it's normal, because what we see on social media and on channel media, like in general in news outlets where people are dying innocently, of course you want to have a reaction against that. You don't want to see anyone dying like innocently, like kids, and from both sides, like first in October 7th, then later on the Israeli retaliation in Gaza. But in the same time, what is not normal is to take action over a knowledge that you didn't really validate, and that is not really normal. Because it's normal to say that I don't want anyone die and like do a demonstration against it. Very human. All of us needs to participate in that. What we don't have to participate in is to blame people with no motives, or to blame people for things that they are not really responsible of. Because it's all about political perspectives here. And since we are in a university, let's debate this and let's discuss this. Because if we are blaming, for instance, the IDF of killing those innocent kids, then why about we blame the people who are endangering them and hiding within tunnels and endangering those lives in the first place? Like, what about we put and ask ourselves the most honest questions, like who put those people in dangers if in the first place they claim to protect their lives? If you don't afford a war, then why do you start it in the first place? Like, let's just ask ourselves those questions, because the death toll right now is very scary, but in the same time, what have we done to protect the Palestinian life? And it's as simple as that. And do you think that we can, have we, how can I say that? Have we consumed all the diplomatic effort to bring peace between Palestinians and Israelis to go to a war? Let's ask also ourselves these questions. Have we consumed all the non-violent solutions? I don't think we did. And I think we go directly to this war just because this instability of the regions, as I said before, is very lucrative to many terrorist organizations, that they love this kind of mob war, in my sense. I even if I lost a lot of friends doing this, but in the same time, many friends came back. And I didn't blame them for going, for cutting the relationship with me, because I understand it's a very human sentiment to feel sad or to feel frustrated to lose someone innocently on the media. But then I really valued the fact that they came back for discussion when they started to learn more about the Gaza war and the motives, whether from a terrorist organization or the IDF, etc., etc. So I believe that without emotions is the way to solve this problem. In the emotional level, we are all sad, and it's very human, but in the non-emotional level, the very tangible, pragmatic one, we need to think very smart in how to solve that, because by sharing, also don't forget, and I'm sorry to say this again, nobody really cares about the Palestinians. And I'm telling you this. Why? Because the way we care about them is very ceremonial, in a way that whenever something happened in Gaza, we go outside of the streets. When nothing happened in Gaza, nobody talks about that. Why? So who really cares about the Palestinians? Because if we want to care about them, let's care about them the whole year. Let's go beyond our comfort zone and talk to the Israelis. And the funny thing is that most people, they don't know nothing about Israel. They don't know nothing about this 20% population that they just talk about. Even if they know about it, they were like, oh no, those maybe are just some traitors or some people that they just abide to the Israeli regime, and they have nothing to do with the real Palestinians. And I don't understand what is a real Palestinian is. Maybe let's dig also more about the history of Palestine. For instance, if you tell me it's a state, then who is the first president of that state? Because it doesn't exist. I mean, the idea here is that let's find some very tangible solutions to the Palestinians, because if we are gonna just talk about ideologically about what the media is telling us, then we will never finish, because otherwise they're gonna all the time they're gonna move us from a side to another side, and it will be unlimited kind of war, and that's it. But if we, as we are in a university, everyone brings their arguments. We are not afraid of anything. Bring your arguments, bring tangible information, that let's challenge each other, in the hope of finding a solution to those people that we instrumentalize them for years and years and years. In France right now, you have, for instance, Mélenchon, that just won the election just because he talked about the October 7th war. How can you instrumentalize the war of other people outside of your country for your own sake? Not only that, in many Arab countries, for them, Palestinian cause is a national cause. I don't understand what's the link in those things. Until you want to make it religious and then talk about some very theological, non-founded theories. So yeah.
Wonderful. I think that's a lot. Is very powerful. I think one of the other things that we are doing in terms of the research that we're developing here is also to think about the interfaith dimension in terms of sort of the conflict, because I think, like you said, the politics of what's happened has turned into religion, and to say, okay, well, the more Muslim you are, the more you have to be anti-Israeli and pro-Palestinian, and really being able to separate those two things. One of the things that we're looking at also is the ethics and the issue of the hijra and migration. So in the early period when Muslims were being persecuted in Mecca, there was a first hijra that went to Abyssinia, which is the Christian kingdom, which was Ethiopia. And then the second hijra, which was the Great Hijra, and it's very, very important in the Islamic calendar, because the Islamic calendar, the year zero, the first year, is the hijrah. It's the migration from Mecca to Medina. So Muhammad and his companions are persecuted by the Meccans who are pagans, and Muhammad and his followers have a very dramatic journey trying to leave, and they end up in Yathrib. And Yathrib at that time, the plurality, which means like almost a majority of Yathrib, of this collection of villages that essentially is a city, are Jewish. They're Jewish tribes. And they actually ask Muhammad to come. So in many ways, the first Muslim community takes refuge in a Jewish city. And they ask him to come and to arbitrate. And there's a lot of powerful symbolism in this story of Muhammad sort of taking refuge in a Jewish city in Arabia. And then from that city, he's actually able to build up the entire Muslim community. There's also a relationship between the Ansar and the Muhajirun. So there are Muslims who had gone earlier there, and they were supposed to take in the people who came with Muhammad. And so each family was paired with another person in order to take care of them. And so there's a lot of ethics in terms of hospitality, in terms of responsibility towards people. And I think there's a lot there in terms of the early story of the Prophet Muhammad that can also be thought through in terms of how we talk about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and particularly our relationship with the Jews to other Muslims as well. And I think the story of the Hijra is a very, very powerful one. So I think with that, what I wanted to do is open it up to questions, and I would love to hear what students and other people have to say about any questions they would have for our guests. I mean, they're quite remarkable people coming from the Muslim world, and this is not something that we have every day here at FIU. So again, we're very grateful to the dean for allowing us to be able to host such a remarkable group, and for Sharaka for bringing you guys here. So if anybody wants to ask a question, please raise your hand.
And we're from the Middle East, so you don't have to be polite. You don't be shy. You can really ask whatever you're thinking.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
Hi, I'm part of the Jewish-Muslim dialogue that Professor Iqbal referenced earlier, and I've been a part of it since its inception a couple of years ago. I have a follow-up to one of the questions that he asked, and that is in regard to when he referenced the ability of people in different religions to be essentially free with their speech and what they're feeling about things. One of the things that we've discovered in our Muslim-Jewish dialogue, unfortunately, is that less Muslims are showing up than Jews, despite the fact that they're invited and they're welcome. And we've learned recently, to our surprise, honestly, that some of the Muslims are, I don't know if I would use the word fearful, but that they have issues with meeting with us, with talking with us, because there is a fear, there is a concern about kickback from their own communities, that this is inappropriate and that they shouldn't be speaking with us. And that's definitely affecting our ability to have honest conversations. And I just wondered if there was any comment on that, and also what do we do about this extremist takeover, in a sense, of so much of the Muslim world? How do we deal with that? How do we have conversations when this is the case?
Yeah, basically, I mean, for our group, if Muslims come, then other Muslims say that they're traitors, they treat them badly, like people just don't show up, and so people are very afraid to show up.
For me, it's a shame, and your statement, it's partially valid, and I feel it because I've been visiting America for more than 4 years right now, doing the speaking tours within university campuses, and I can share the same sentiment that a lot of Muslims, they don't show up, and I feel it's not just their fearful. I don't think it's about fear, but mainly about an ideological statement that why should I discuss with an Israeli, with a Zionist, and with a baby killer how this is how they label that. And also I have a huge respect for Muslims that they show up to this kind of, even if they don't agree with what we say, but at the same time, I have huge respect for them because at least they showed up and they want to share their point of view, even if they 100% disagree of what I am saying. I believe And I will tell you something a little bit funny, but I always love to joke about it. You know, there was an Israeli who once told me who Abraham sacrificed, Isaac or Ishmael, because for the Jews it's Isaac, for us Muslims it's Ishmael. I told him, you know what, if we even come up to this debate, whether you want Ishmael or Isaac, you take it. Whether you want it Isaac, okay, it's Isaac. Because for me, the goal is just to have at least this conversation. Normally we don't have. And to be honest with you, my goal in Sharaka is at least to have a discussion between a Muslim and a Jew. At least. We don't have to agree. And I don't think God created us as different as we are in religion to be all the same. I believe it's a very boring word to be all the same. And it's stated in the Quran that we are created in different cultures and nations just to mingle and to learn from each other. So I believe that this is the goal, because if we come up to the goal where Muslims and Jews, they have those theological conversations, I think it's a final goal for me, regarding of the outcome of it, because discussion at itself, it's a form of peace. And so yeah.
I'll just add a little bit that we face the same problem, that people don't want to be seen with the Jews or with the Israelis, you know. So we try as much as we can to make it a safe space, that it's not a synagogue or a mosque. It's a university hall, for example. It's about food and music, you know. We don't highlight it as Jews and Muslims and Christian, you know, to make it easier for them to come without being judged. Because when they come and people say, oh, this person went to the Israeli Jews event, whatever, they will be judged and they will be fearful of going to those events. One thing that we do in our events, that we tell them there will be no photography, it will be something, start with a smaller thing, you know? So people feel comfortable. That's what I do with people that actually want to come, but they're fearful of other people's opinion. And they come and they build this relationship, and it's a baby step process, honestly, but it happens.
Because then they bring one more person and then
Yes.
one more person, and
Yes.
slowly. So I think the most important thing is keep doing the group that you have. And
Yeah.
I think it's amazing that you have at least some Muslim participants. I think slowly, as more and more feel comfortable, one brings one friend, and hopefully it continues to build up. But it takes time.
So I have a follow-up to that. First of all, Fatima, Yosef, and Rachel, thank you for being here. I'm a professor in the chemistry department, and my grandparents are founders of the state of Israel. They built a kibbutz in the 30s, and I used to go there a lot in the 80s and 90s. And it connected me to the country, you know, to the point where, you know, even today, you know, strongly feel connected. In the late 90s, there were some Jewish philanthropists that recognized that just going to Israel was really the key to get people connected. And so they started the Taglit Birthright program, which made opportunities for Jewish youth and up to about 20 years old to be able to go to Israel for free. And as I'm listening to you both speak, I'm wondering, maybe this is the connection that is needed for maybe Muslim members of, you know, that are interested in this efforts to make things better. Maybe we need something similar for that for Muslim youth and Muslim adults that are interested.
Definitely. I think that's part of the work that Sharaka does, is we bring delegations from not only the Abraham Accords countries, but we've also brought from the Muslim community in India, from Pakistan, and from countries that don't even have official relationships with Israel to Israel, not with the goal of having everyone leave with an Israeli flag in their hand, but just to come and see, and we allow people to ask questions. We actually just had a delegation from the African American Muslim community in the United States. We had a few different sheikhs and other Muslims from New York and from Texas that came, that were, you know, very critical, had their own thoughts and opinions, and they came and they just met with people. They asked lots and lots of questions. They came back still with criticisms and their own thoughts and opinions, and I don't think any of them came out saying, I'm a Zionist, I love Israel, but they all said, wow, that was a really eye-opening experience, and I met people, and now I have 1,000 more questions and want to continue asking questions and having conversation, and I remember them pounding me with very difficult questions, but it was amazing because they said we just want to come and learn and speak with people. That's really what we try and do, is just bring people and let them see, we say if you want to go somewhere, go. We're not going to stop you from going somewhere or speaking to someone. We just want to try and have you meet someone and form your own opinions.
We just following up with what Rachel has just shared with you. 3 years ago, we created what we call Holocaust education program. And why Holocaust? Because we believe that this very specific time of history is very relevant to understand more the Israel that we know nowadays. And even after October 7th, we got a lot of critiques, like people are dying right now in Gaza, and you are teaching people Holocaust education. But this is exactly why we are teaching Holocaust education, because we are not in comparison. We are not comparing life. Only one Palestinian life lost, it means as if we lost all humanity. One Jewish life lost, it's all we lost all humanity, and it's a Muslim saying, actually. The idea here is not to compare misery. Like Palestinians, they have their own misery right now. Jews back then, it was the deadliest massacre in human history. It was a Jewish misery, but then we are educating it to globalize it in a way. It's a human misery, not a Jewish misery. But not only that, it's not only comparison, but the most important thing is we want people to understand how Israel makes sense nowadays. We want them to understand that Jews are not how can I say that? They are not just Middle Easterns. They are the one of the founding cultures of the Middle East we know nowadays, and that the fact that they're all all over the world, from Eastern Europe to North Africa, etc. It's just a part of and even it's in the Torah, it's even if on the Quran, it's like a divine punishment. But then in the end, they will go back to their homeland. So we share the same Middle East. Middle East is not Arab. So educating people on Holocaust opens the door to all those new perspectives about who are the Jews, who are the Israelis right now. And I think this part of the history is so debated in the Arab communities. The numbers are so questioned, and some people, they're like, maybe the Holocaust has never existed, or maybe 6 million, it's a lot, maybe it's not more than 300,000, etc., etc. So for us, we felt the need that by teaching Holocaust education, it will bring two communities together. As I said before, of course, after the Abraham Accords, it's a geopolitical debate. Why did we sign or normalized with Israel? And also, this again dragged us to a religious and theological debate. Should we be friends? And in theology, and you are a professor of theology, are we friends within the books, like the divine books? And to my surprise, it's only good news that we are. It's so silly and stupid that we have all the framework to live together. As a Muslim, I am allowed to eat kosher food, and I am also allowed to pray in a synagogue. And I know that for a Jew, he's allowed to pray in a mosque, and to have all this peaceful framework between us, to pray to one God and to hate each other at the end. I feel this is very stupid. I will tell you something very tricky. I don't use this metaphor a lot, but I think it's very important to share it with you. Right now, when sometimes I go and I hear a lot of demonstrations of some radical Muslims cheering death for Israelis, you know what I hear? I hear death to the Jews as if they were massacred back in Khaybar war. And then you can, Khaybar, it was a whole separate story where there were a fight between a community of the Jews and the Prophet. And then the radical Islamists made it as if it was the Islam is against the Jews, which is totally not. As a matter of fact, I want you to know that even if my Quran, there is a fighting between Muslims and Muslims. And in the Quran it says, if you have no solutions, fight them, but I prefer not to fight the Muslims. If there was also radicals, they might say, oh, maybe Islam is against Muslims as well. You see the analogy that we have fights against many people, and people tend to generalize that. But the good news here is this. Imagine you want so bad to hate Jews that you go back 1,400 years ago, meaning that you don't have enough like data or content to hate the Jews, and you had to go back 1,400 years ago. Meaning that the less deadliest religion to the Jews, it was Islam, it wasn't another thing. Like, meaning that we didn't really fight together that much all during this 1,400, even if there was a lot of course, a lot of massacres. And here I'm talking, maybe in Morocco, we lost more than 1,000 Jews in the dynasty of Almohad. They were prosecuted in Iraq. Of course, radical Islam made it clear that they targeted the Jews. But here talking about how much of fights and wars between Muslims and Jews is not really that much regarding other religions. And here I want to share, it's very tricky to discuss this because I went out of my comfort zone to tell you this kind of analogy because it's very tricky because people may take it two ways, but I had to tell you that there is peace theologically between Jews and Muslims. And there is even a verse in the Quran, it says, well, okay, I will just explain. I will explain it. It says, وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ كُلٌّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. And that's it. Meaning that the Jews, the Christians and Sabi'in, who are monotheist religion way before those two monotheists, all of them, they will go to heaven for two reasons. Just believe in God and do good deeds. He didn't say to the Jews, believe in our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't say that. And here you can understand that there is a room for Jews and Christians in our own Quran, not the other way around. And this is exactly the type of respect and love that we want to share between faiths, is that Muslims were never against the Jews. And here I'm talking about a very modern form of it. And the war we see right now is very geopolitical, a lot of geopolitical stacks in it from Iranian proxies, etc. And we need to deal with it in a very geopolitical way, not in a very religious way.
Yeah.
Yes, Professor Alvarez, I have a question. The Abraham Accords are premised, at least bin Salman and al-Sisi of Egypt see it, as including necessarily the creation of a Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza, at the very least. But Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich and even Bibi Netanyahu have said that during their watch there will be no Palestinian state, and they've even spoken about annexing the West Bank and Gaza. Yes, there are extremists on both sides, but that's the whole point. There are extremists on both sides. One side doesn't want the Palestinian state, and the other side wants perhaps to destroy the Jews, and both are wrong. But without a Palestinian state, I think the Abraham Accords are dead. How do you see this?
I have to agree with you that if October 7 happened and made peace far away for Saudi to sign the Abraham Accords, people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir made it even further, and they make it even harder for Muslims like us that works in bringing people together, that they threaten the peace deals that we have. And unfortunately, you said extremism exists in both Muslims and Jews sides, unfortunately. But I think is also what the Saudi government said is, I don't think peace will be possible with the current government. And I'll be honest, I have to agree. If ministers like them comes and say all this bad stuff about Muslims, about Saudi Arabia, it won't happen. So let's hope the next government is different and value peace and won't say stupid things like that. And then we can see peace possible in our region, especially with Saudi Arabia joining.
I will also just add from the Israeli perspective and say that in the same way that in America we're a democracy, we vote for our government, but not every single person agrees with everything the government does. And maybe some people here haven't agreed with past administrations or current U.S. administrations. And the same goes, for Israelis. I personally don't agree with everything, especially the people you specifically named and the things that they say. And I think that's one of the reasons Shuraka became an organization was we can't let the governments control everything. Yes, we need the governments in order to sign these specific agreements, but I think when you look at the Abraham Accords, what we really want is not just agreements with more countries, we want agreements with the actual people. The point being that as wars come and go, governments come and go, but the actual people in these countries are still going to be there and are affected by what the governments say in these agreements. So we really want to bring people together on a level that no matter what any of our governments are saying, I can still sit here and have a conversation with Fatima and meet Fatima's friends, and Fatima can meet my Israeli friends, and we can try and grow it on a civil society level. We've seen that, as I mentioned, we do work with countries that aren't a part of the Abraham Accords, bringing people together in these countries. So in terms of the actual Abraham Accords, I think leadership, specifically on the Israeli side, needs to change in order to move things forward with that. But hopefully on a civil society level, it can continue to grow. And who knows, especially in a democracy, that what the people are saying, if more people in Israel want peace and are fighting for it, hopefully it will lead to different leadership that will also reflect the same values.
I mean, I think one of the things I wanted to highlight, and then I'll let Lauren go. I think what Yusuf was saying, especially about the anti-Semitism, I think, in the Muslim world, is that, even historically, there's, the issue of anti-Semitism for Christians is extremely salient because of the way that Christ was killed, and the fact that you also have this issue of how do you deal with the Tanakh, with the Old Testament, in terms of like Christian theology. And I think it becomes very central. One of the advantages that Islam has is that the Quran is completely separate from the Old and the New Testament. And so in terms of like, you would have to understand the stories of the Tanakh, of sort of the Old Testament, but it's not necessary to read the Old Testament to be a Muslim in terms of your theology. And so when we look at like the relationship between Muslims and Jews historically, really the anti-Semitism that you see in the Muslim world today comes in the 20th century. And it really has to be, because I do work in Pakistan, and when you look at the anti-Semitism in Pakistan, it's very interesting because when I was going through some of the books in the 50s and 60s in Urdu, it's actually translations of like the protocols of the elders of Zion that goes into Arabic, and then from Arabic it comes into Urdu, and then it's used within the Urdu literature like for hatred against the Jews. And so there's this whole provenance where the anti-Semitism of the Muslim world today really comes from the 20th century, and it comes from European anti-Semitism that comes into the Arab world, and then from the Arab world, then it spreads across the Muslim world, And so I think it's it's a very important point that he makes, is that this is not something that's historic. This is not an enmity in a war that goes back, hundreds of years or thousands of years. It's really a modern conflict that really starts in the 20th century, and it's something that can also be ended as well. And I think when you have that perspective, then you have a more hope, I think, as well, that it's something that started and it also has an end to itself.
There is just a technical answer to what you have said, which is very important, is that if we tokenize Smotrich, for instance, or Ben Gvir as a representative of Israel, it's the same, for me, it's the same mistake we do when we tokenize Hamas and say that they are the representative of all the Palestinians. Because let's go backwards. For Hamas to get elected in Gaza when Ariel Sharon withdrew all the troops from Gaza and give it to the Palestinians, there were a fight between Fatah and Hamas. And Hamas killed more than 300 Fatah people, and nobody will deny this truth. And even the Hamas and Fatah people, they acknowledge this about each other. It wasn't really a democratic consensus or elections that really happened in Gaza. Same thing, not really the same thing, but still, in order for Netanyahu to stay, he had to do a majority or a coalition, and he had to bring people like Ben Gvir and Smotrich to the government to stay in power. Of course, those people are not really. We cannot reduce the whole Israel as is Smotrich or Ben Gvir. Those people, they represent themselves. But as I said, Palestinians, there is a lot of peaceful people in them that we don't get to talk about them, and that they really want peace with Israel. And as a matter of fact, we have Ahmad al-Khatib, who is from Gaza, who is also a friend of us in Sharaka, and he's based in Washington, D.C., and he speaks so good that we want peace with Israel as a Palestinians. We have also all the aspects of the Israelis right now. Maybe it's one of the most the distinguished or multicultural countries over the world, which is Israel, with all the Druze, the Jews, and the Arabs and the Christians, and you cannot reduce all that with what Ben Gvir has said or Smotrich has said. It's a nation. I mean, as it's a country that has quite 80 years old. But also, if we talk about biblical things, this country has more than 3,000 years old. If we talk about biblical things, so for me, the thing is that will we decide to reduce this country for two people? Will we reduce, in the same analogy, will we reduce Palestinians that they are just Hamas advocates and they want just? We cannot do that, and this is exactly the nuance we want to bring here. Is that we are against radicalism from both sides in all its forms, and it's time to bring the peaceful people to talk about it, and this is exactly what we do.
Thank you. All right, so, okay. Okay, and then we have Lauren also that's here.
Oh my God. Hi. I just wanted to say thank you guys so much. This was so interesting. I came here for a class and I learned so much. But I wanted to ask while you guys are here, I'm like a media major, and I would love to know you guys' opinion on, the way that the news is kind of covering these issues. What's something or what's an angle that you kind of wish you could explore or you could read about surrounding these issues, if there's an aspect missing from that kind of reporting that kind of misinforms people about it?
I think one of the biggest things is what we call the silent majority. I think that's what's unfortunately missing. I think everyone that's involved in the work that Sharaka does, I'm sure most of you had no idea that we were an organization until an hour ago when you walked in the room, and I think that's what's missing, is that on all sides in every single country throughout the Middle East, and there's many conflicts and radicalism that's happening, we never ever hear the small voices, and it's because they're small and they might not have as much following. They might not be popular in all of their countries, but they exist, and that's one thing that I really wish. That's one of the things that Sharaka does. We have social media. We're not a big thing, but we do try. Fatima has a personal social media where she tries and posts a lot of the things that she talks about, and I think these are the voices that are unfortunately missing, is because I think they're less attractive. I think the loud, intense voices are what's very attractive. When you're saying something very aggressive as someone, those are the quotes that get grabbed, but we never just hear the normal people living every day that occasionally sit down with someone of a different religion. We're not hearing about the work that you guys are doing in your group. It's not publicized all the time, but it's happening in every single country, every single community. They're small, but we're mighty, and so that's the one thing that I think is definitely missing.
Okay, what I'm gonna ask you is very strange, but please go to Israel. Because I feel that we are missing a lot by not going there. I know that many young people right now, they choose to go to Thailand, to other places that they feel very spiritual and it's very pleasant to go to, but please go to Israel, because it is really weird for me to judge a country that we have never visited. And you cannot do things and demonstrate against Israel if you've never been there. And I wish you don't have to agree about anything that you see in Israel, but please just go. Because we are missing a lot. We didn't yet get to grasp what is exactly happening inside Israel. The only barrier between us and Israel is media, and I don't trust medias anyway. So please go by yourself. I don't ask you to adopt a sort of narrative. I'm not telling you how to believe or why you want to believe in that. I'm just asking you to explore and to go out of your comfort zone and just go, which is a very human thing to do. Just see by yourself and get to see that, and you don't have to follow any propaganda or so whatever. Just have your own opinion about this. Traveling, going there, I think will broaden your perspective about the conflict. So please, there is no substitute to go and see by yourself what's happening in there.
And go to other Middle Eastern countries as well. Yosef likes to talk about Israel, and I'm flattered because I think everyone should go to Israel. But also, I think that's one thing that we don't see is, I think a lot of people in the Western world, especially in America, they're not going to Bahrain. As Fatih mentioned, most people didn't even know Bahrain is a country or where it is. Go visit other countries in the Middle East. I think going to Abu Dhabi and Dubai and UAE was the most eye-opening, incredible thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I thought New York was a cool city, and then I saw the buildings and everything. It's truly eye-opening just to go visit a place that's so different from you, visiting people that are so different. You don't need to talk with people in the street. Just go and observe for 20 minutes in a different country, I think, is important. We don't hear enough from people who are traveling and sharing their experiences. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll let Lauren have the last question. So we're very honored to
Thank
have
you.
Lauren here, who's the religion editor for the Miami
Religion
Herald.
writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a member of the big bad media that we all keep talking about.
No, but you're okay. You're fine. It's everyone else.
Well,
you know?
this young lady asked a question I was going to kind of ask, but I'll just build on that a little bit because I feel like all of you spoke about propaganda and misinformation. Like that was kind of a theme in all of your stories. And, you know, I'm wondering if you guys ever like sat down and compared like maybe in a news event that you read about from like the perspective of like maybe the Times of Israel versus Al Jazeera and tried to figure out like where are the biases coming from and like what actually happened here. Like, okay, I read about this, but I want to know more about it. Because I feel like often the truth about something lies in the nuance of it all. And like you said, like that's not always what gets clipped in a headline, because I can write about something like, okay, this Muslim organization just got designated a terrorist group by our governor. Somebody reads the headline, and then I do like a deep dive into this group and try to like provide all this context and explain, right? I call all my sources, I get all the voices, but then that story gets like 700 views, right? Because no one's like super interested in all of the context. They just want to know like quickly what happened, right? So I feel like we're working against like this crazy sort of social media and media industry. And anyway, I'm just wondering like if there's ever a time where you all kind of like sat down and figured out like this is where the biases are, and yeah, what else do we need to do better in media covering these things?
I think you're asking the wrong people in the sense I think we're all people that do that. That's why we're in this work, is because we're people who try and open our minds to other opinions and different things. I know for me personally, whenever things happen, I look at as many news sources as possible, especially with news sources that I don't always agree with, or I know that are specifically more left or specifically more right, and I try and find the common ground between all of them. And I think also an unfortunate thing for Americans is the only looking at English news. And I think when you open yourselves up to news channels that are producing in Arabic or in Hebrew or a local language, you'll see that it's very different than how it's written in English. So if you don't speak those languages, finding someone who does or trying to at least Google Translate it, you learn a lot by reading different languages, not just different news sources. Because oftentimes, I think it happens even with Al Jazeera also, like the English page is often different than Arabic, and for the Hebrew news as well, or the Israeli news as well, the Hebrew is often very different from how it's written in English. So trying to expand yourself to different languages and not just perspectives, because reading something in a local language will give you much more, I think, context.
I think for me, it's not about the truth itself, but it's more about the diversity of the perspectives. Because I will give you like a very simple example. Like in the Israeli media, you see that there is an operation against a terrorist leader in Gaza, and then there is like some casualties. In Al Jazeera, you see that there is more than 20 or 30 people that they got killed by the IDF from an operation conducted by the IDF. But for me, the truth is we just lost 30 people. That's the truth for me. So the perspective doesn't really matter until we get out of our comfort zone and compare both perspectives. And for me, I would tell you is that I even myself read Al Jazeera and I watch Al Jazeera because for me, I want to see all the perspectives. The only thing that makes me different is to stick to one narrative. And also because I know that I have more content and in depth because I've been to Israel before, and I don't know many things about it, but still I know why this happened, why this didn't happen. So for instance, to be as a Muslim and to tell you that to be like, for instance, like against what happened in October 7th, I know that many Muslims don't have the capacity to be against what Hamas has done as a terrorist attack because they are still seeing Israel as an enemy. So for me, it's not about the perspectives, but it's about the intent and how do you see the situation. For instance, I can see a lot of good things about Israel, and also, but it doesn't mean that I don't read the other sides. It does, because in any moment we need all this 360-degree image about what really happened, and to cross platforms, everything in order to have a deep opinion. So for me, what we want to do in Sharaki here is at least to bridge the gap. I want them to meet with the Israelis. I want them to be in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and all that. So this way, if they read the news, they have a sort of a framework to how to decide what is wrong and what is right. We are not here to bring a narrative. We are not here to do hasbara for Israel. As I said in the beginning, Israel is the best country. I really don't care about Israel. I'm sorry. Even if I spoke a lot about Israel, I am Moroccan, and I only care about my country, if I may say. But in the same time, I see a lot of peace within Israel, and I'm very fed up with all the people trying giving a lot of enmity to Israel, and Israel is the enemy, etc., etc. I've only got a lot of good things after Abraham Accords in Morocco anyway. We really thrived after signing with Israel anyway. And I see all those Nobel Prizes and all those Jews that they really contributed to the science, and then you tell me how inhuman those people are. I don't buy this BS. So for me, this is exactly what I'm trying to explain to people, that please go and see by yourself. We are not here to educate you or to school you. Just as a disclaimer, we are not here to school anyone. Just go and see by yourself and make your own opinion. We are just here to trigger this attitude that please go out of your comfort zone and learn by yourself. So yeah.
All right, so with that, I think we will conclude. I think this has been an amazing panel, and we really are grateful to the dean and the school for hosting, and for Sharaka for coming here, and for the really, really important work that you're doing. I know it must seem sometimes that it's an uphill battle, but I think that you guys are on, I feel like there's a path of righteousness that you have to do what is right, even if people disagree, even if unfortunately it's against the majority, because eventually that truth will win out. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you.